Yeah. Did you get a chance to watch the second trailer I posted on the
Oh no,
Facebook?
not the second trailer. I did see the first one.
It's really good.
I
Yeah, it's
really
really
like it.
yeah, it's creepy. The second one's really quite creepy. So,
Got like
um,
a twist almost. Doing something maybe refreshing with the slasher genre. Is that
right.
what you got out of it? Yeah.
He's totally a slasher fan, and that's why I want to talk to him about. I love indie filmmakers, movie makers.
Yeah. When it's done right, it's magnificent. When it's not, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I know I make schlock, and I make no excuses for it. That's so I'm okay with that. I'm all
Right.
right with that. These
Mhm.
are meant to be cheesy movies, and hey, what do you want for
Absolutely.
$135?
Right on, man.
But I
They're
think
masterpieces.
they're still fun. That's the whole point. We're having a
Yeah.
good time.
Everybody has fun when they're involved in it, and
Yeah,
yeah,
I thought
yeah.
Quest for Uranus turned out really, really well.
Oh
I
yeah.
mean, I was so happy with it. So I don't know if you noticed, I got some new background stuff going on in the
Oh.
back. Yeah,
Oh wow.
yeah. I
Nice.
got that's the mummy that Sean Kennedy drew, Dr. Tar's a Feather,
Oh yeah.
and then War of the Gargantuas, Shin Godzilla, and then Johnny Sacco, and there's other ones. Hey Isaiah, how's it going, man?
Hey, how are you doing?
Doing well. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you guys
Hi,
as
Isaiah. Nice to
well.
meet you.
Hey, nice to meet you.
We are going to have a good time today.
Yes, I'm excited. I'm excited. This is the first podcast interview that I'm having in regards to talking about the film. And I'm actually later on tonight, I think I might have mentioned it, but I'm throwing a little mini rave here just to kind of promote the film and show the trailer and BTS and stuff like that. So today's a fun day.
Yeah, the big media
Excellent.
day for you. Excellent. Well, I'm
Yeah.
glad we could be the first podcast to help showcase you and your movie and get the word out.
For sure, for sure. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Where are you located?
I am based in Atlanta, Georgia.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, a little too far for us. We're in northern Ohio, so we couldn't come down to the rave. Although if we were local, we would
Yeah.
definitely come down.
Awesome. Yeah. Maybe next time. Next time.
Yes. Yeah.
Crash the party. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
right. That's right. Um, yeah, I mean, we were going to swing down to Greenville, South Carolina to pick up some pizza anyway at Miles. Hey, Atlanta's only a few hours from
You
Greenville,
know,
so
it's only a few hours. Not, can stop by, dance a little bit, party a little bit, and then
that's
go
right.
right back.
Excellent. That sounds good, man. Looking forward to that. So, well, do you have any questions for us before we get going, or are you ready to
Do
rock
I have
and
any
roll?
questions? No, I'm such a like a go with the flow, natural person. Like I don't like to like conversations like this. I don't like to like try to pre-plan too much. I really am just a natural go with the flow energy
Yeah,
type of person.
yeah, same here. If you ever do
Mhm.
watch any of our shows that are not interviews, nothing's planned. I mean, other than our own material, we just
That's
we just go for it.
unscripted,
Yeah,
Yeah.
disrespectful. Yeah,
yeah.
it's a lot
I
of
mean,
fun.
I for interviews, it's important to know what questions you're going to ask. I mean,
Of
that's
course.
important, but otherwise, when it's just usually there's one or two more of us, and like our last week's, we have this ongoing series called Slugfest, where we
Mm,
have compared two albums to one another, and we
okay.
do like a track at a time, kind of like a boxing match. So
Okay.
round one, we all do our takes on both songs. We tell which one is the winner, and we just kind of work our way through the album. But we do all kinds of things like that, and it's no scripts at all, just our own notes. So I totally get that. That's part of the fun,
It
you
is. It's
know.
more natural that way, I feel. It feels less scripty.
Sure. Right. And I heard, was it yesterday or something, that most podcasts are scripted, and I'm like, what? How? That's
Wow.
crazy. We couldn't do that. I mean, Chop Top and I and the other ones, we're like, longtime friends, 30, 40 years. So we just have all this history and we know each other. So that our banter comes from knowing one another and just,
Right.
and just busting each other's balls and just having fun. So,
Right.
it's just, I think if we tried to script it, it wouldn't work.
Wouldn't feel, yeah, it
Yeah.
would feel unnatural, not too there.
Yeah, I get it. I get it. All right, Isaiah. Well, we're gonna do our intro and then we'll start this ball rolling. How's that?
All right, let's go. Sounds fun.
Excellent. All right.
This is Carl from Now, and you are watching and listening to the Heavy Metal.
I am Montag, master of illusion. What goes up must come down, but not always.
Hey, this is Chop Top. Keep it heavy and horrifying.
And you are watching and listening to Heavy Metal Horror. Oh, kitties. We've got a great show for you today. We've got indie horror filmmaker, writer, producer, actor, Isaiah Rice. Isaiah, welcome to Heavy Metal Horror.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. Wow, that was the intro. Wow, like I was like, oh, wow, actor, writer, producer. Oh my gosh. Thank you
Yeah,
for
well,
that. I feel
well,
so,
you're-
so special.
You're
Yeah,
welcome, man.
he's ready to get out of the show now.
That's No, I get it. I totally get where you're coming from because I've done 3 indie low budget movies as well. They're comedy horrors. They're not straight horror like what you're doing. But the 2 movie posters behind me, these are posters from 2 of my movies. I've got Monster Party Beach, which is like a 60s bikini beach movie with a rubber suit monster, and then Quest for Uranus, which is like a 50s sci-fi, flick in black and white, but that one cost me $135 to make. I mean, that's how low the budget is, and that was buying a green screen. So and that
Best
covered all
part
the
of it was I co-starred in it. So
yeah, Chop Top was in it. That like bought all the Eurynutians costumes. I mean, hey, that went far. They're $135 went a long way.
Use the resources.
Yeah, so I get it. So let's talk a little bit about your background.
Yeah.
And you had said you were from Atlanta, Georgia,
Mhm.
and what we found is people who want to make movies tend to love movies. I mean, that's why you want to make them. So let's talk about the first movie you ever fell in love with.
Ooh, the first movie, I'm of course I'm gonna go with the first horror movie. The first horror movie that I fell in love with, only because I distinctively remember watching it in theaters with my parents, um, was Scream. That movie came out in 1996. I was born in 1993. So I distinctively remember being in the movie theater with my parents and watching it. And I don't know if that's bad parenting on their part for letting a 3-year-old watch a horror.
I was like doing the math, like, wait a minute, you were 3 watching Scream?
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
fantastic.
yeah.
those are wonderful parents.
Oh, they
That's
were
right.
awesome.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, no. So I remember that was kind of like the first horror movie that I fell in love with. And I think I fell in love with it honestly because it was just so slashers just were so entertaining to me at a young age. I mean, especially in the 90s. I think slasher movies in the 90s kind of really kind of revamped a little bit, I think from the 80s.
Yeah.
So I felt like Scream was kind of like the first horror film that I saw, and I was like, wow, like this mass killer and the story's so good, and there's running and there's screaming, and it's like you don't know who it is, and the storyline. So I just really kind of fell in love with slashers. So I mean, the 1990s slashers, I mean, I just love so much. So Scream, I Know You Did Last Summer, Urban Legend, The Faculty, Halloween H2O. I mean, I think that period in time, I believe Wilson, I believe, he was writing all those, a lot of those main projects. So yeah, no, Scream was kind of like the first horror movie, slasher movie that I watched, and I was like, wow, I really enjoy horror movies.
Nice. So is that your favorite movie now, Scream, or if not, what is your favorite movie?
Oh, gosh, what is my that's a hard one.
It doesn't have to be horror; it could be any genre.
My favorite movie. That's hard to say. I'm a say I'm gonna just keep it with Scream. I'm gonna keep it with Scream, the
Sure.
original, the original. I'm not going to talk about
All the sequels. Yeah, I haven't seen like the last two. I
Yeah.
I didn't even know they kept on making them. I'm like, what? There's another Scream? Wow. Like
Yeah.
I just kind of lost touch
Yeah.
with it. But that first one's really great.
Yeah,
Wes
I think.
Craven. It's
Yeah.
funny. It pulls you in. It's
Mhm.
self-aware. Kind of
Very
breaks
much.
that. It doesn't quite break. It doesn't break the fourth wall, but it's the characters are self-aware about they're in a horror film.
Fully,
That's that
fully.
kind of self-reflexivity. To bring in an academic term. That's what that's makes it fun. But yeah, and one thing I noticed about the '90s slasher films, they are considerably less bloody than the '80s
They
Mhm.
are.
ones. So you think of like Friday the 13th, which
Mhm.
is just like a gore fest.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like these shots, like the literal, like the money shots are like the blood spurts and the gore and viscera coming out. And then Scream is fairly bloodless.
Mm.
I mean, not really too bloody at all. At least it's not gratuitous like
Yeah,
that. But
yeah,
this,
like watching that, like watching it now about and thinking about all the special effects we have today and the gore. You think of stuff like Saw. I feel like what made that movie still so popular. I really think it was the storyline and just it had a very kind of tongue-in-cheek aspect to it, to where it didn't need to be, I think, as gory as like the slasher movies that were present in the 1980s. I
mhm,
think it was present in the 1980s because it really, the late 1970s, 1980s, when it came to slasher movies, that was kind of like the first depiction of really kind of showing this new genre in horror. And I think that gore was kind of like a shock factor. It kind of like made people disgusted, like, oh my gosh, I can't believe they're depicting this on film, but it also made them want to go see it as well.
sure. I mean, I when I was a kid, I saw the movie Scanners when I was like in eighth grade. I don't know if you've ever seen Scanners or not,
I
Isaiah.
haven't.
No,
I,
okay. It's about people who have telepathic and telekinetic abilities. And there's this one scene where they can affect physical bodies. And there's a scene I won't spoil it all for you, like when it happens. But there's a scene where one scanner blows this other person's head up. It just
oh my
shows
gosh.
it like just utter like blows. And I was like 13 years old, and I'm like, oh my God. And I grew up watching horror from my earliest days, watching Universal horror and Hammer horror. But this, I'm like, oh fuck, I want to learn how to do that. I want to blow people's heads up, and learn like makeup effects. So I was obsessed with anything I could watch, all the gore effects, anything like that, because I wanted to figure out how it's done.
Yeah.
So I totally get that. That's why the main difference, we see in these movies, they're not as bloody, but the suspense is still there,
Yeah.
and the tension is still there,
Mhm.
which is really
Mhm.
fun. So, well, now that we got your favorite
Mhm.
film, what is your least favorite movie?
My least favorite movie? Oh gosh. My least favorite movie. My least favorite film, honestly, I would say, okay. It's a part of a trilogy. I'll Always Know What You Did Last Summer. It's
Hmm.
the third movie from the I Know What You Did Last Summer franchise. And this is why it's not my favorite, and sometimes why I feel like when we get into the sequels and the trilogies, it can be a hit or miss. Um, the first two I felt like were great. I love the storyline. Very similar to Scream, that whole like kind of who did it. I love the sequel because it starred Brandy in it. It was for me as a kid kind of seeing at that time in the 90s, I mean, Brandy was like this big R&B sensation. So to
Mhm.
kind of see someone I related to be in this slasher horror movie, it was like, oh, that's so cool. But I'll Always Know What You Did Last Summer. That was my least favorite, honestly, because I just felt like they were not really trying to they weren't really trying to kind of keep that same suspense and energy that I felt like was present with the first two. And I think sometimes, honestly, that can kind of be a bigger critique on when we do these kind of sequels and trilogies that go straight to DVD.
Sure.
No offense to any of those, but I think sometimes as horror fans, we kind of we don't look forward to the trilogies, especially if it's a straight to DVD situation, because it's kind of like sometimes you just gotta leave things like where they are. You don't need to kind of revamp it or continue it. I think sometimes you just gotta leave it as is. So I would say that's probably one of my least favorite horror movies.
Okay. Yeah, it makes sense. I didn't know there was a third one. I've seen the first two, but I didn't know there was a third one. And I was there mostly for Jennifer Love Hewitt. So, I can
Right,
see
pretty
this.
much.
Do you have a favorite director?
Got a favorite director. Rest in peace, Wes Craven.
Wes Craven. Okay.
Yeah, I like grew up watching a lot of his films. And I felt like as a director, he just had a certain type of eye that just felt like very it felt very fresh and young and different and attractive. I mean, I feel like I've seen a lot of Wes Craven's a lot of his movies, even like there was Cursed. I felt like that was his first kind of werewolf movie, like that came out, I believe, back in 2004. I liked that. He had another slasher one that came out, I believe, in 2011. My Soul to Take. Vampire in Brooklyn. That was
right.
the first kind of black vampire film that he directed. And I remember like watching that and thinking, oh wow, like he kind of has a bit of a inclusive mindset. And if you look at a lot of his films, I do like how he's kind of added Black characters into his film in a way that didn't feel stereotypical. It didn't feel very exploitive or anything like that. It was very much just kind of normal. But yeah, Wes Craven, rest in peace. Like I would say, he's one of my favorite horror directors.
Okay, nice. Well, speaking of black vampire films, have you seen Blackula?
The original from the 1970s?
Yes, the original Blackula.
Yeah, so I've seen bits and pieces of it. I haven't sat down to watch the whole thing. I did watch a horror documentary on it that was kind of talking about the black horror films of the 1970s and how it was pretty much that period of black exploitation.
The blaxploitation, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So like very familiar with just kind of what that did in regards to showing blackness in horror in a different way, for sure.
Yeah, Blackula, Chop and I will agree. Blackula is one of our favorite horror movies.
I love it.
Yeah, it is so well done. And Mama Walde is like the baddest ass motherfucker you would ever want. I mean, he's like the coolest vampire ever. It's a different screen presence than Christopher Lee or than Bela Lugosi. It's just his own vampire, and it definitely, it's a reflection of the time, the early 70s, but it's also kind of transcendent because it's a vampire story. Those themes are still there. They're kind of echoing around. And so there's like one shot, my skin's kind of crawling just thinking about it. There's one shot that Chop and I know we had to slow down and watch a couple times because it scared us, but there's a scene that's really effective and really scary that takes place in the and it was at the police station, or I think it was, or the hospital, but yeah, I know. It's like, it's so good. So yeah,
the lady comes back.
Don't spoil it. Yeah, don't spoil it.
Okay.
Maybe Isaiah's not seen it, but that's exactly the scene, right, Chop? Yeah, it's so good. So when you get a chance to watch it, I think it's worth the watch. Really good movie. Well, what is it about horror that you like? Like, what appeals to you about the horror genre?
I think it's that feeling of, even when I think about, going to a haunted house, for me, I think it's that feeling of being scared as shit. I can curse, right? Is that okay?
Yeah. You can say any words you want. Yeah, we swear a lot. Yeah, so bring it on, man.
Too. We don't care.
Can't say anything we haven't heard before.
Yeah, I think it's that feeling, that internal feeling of being scared as shit, but then at the end of the day, knowing that everything's gonna be okay.
Sure.
It's like this very weird like thrill factor for me. It kind of almost feels like a high, right? It's kind of like that feeling of being afraid, but knowing like nothing is real, it's all entertaining. Nothing really is going to happen to you, and just kind of watching that on film, I think is really cool. And what draws me to horror. I think what draws me to slasher movies in particular is there's something about somebody with a mask, a knife, an axe, a sword, whatever the weapon of choice may be, and whatever the mask of choice may be, just kind of killing people, that is just horrifying to me, because it kind of feels like that could really happen, right? Kind of sometimes some of the horror films that kind of deal with more so that kind of supernatural psychological element, they're still awesome and they're still great, but I think something about slasher films feels very real, right? I mean, when you think about serial killers now, famous ones, we think about like a Ted Bundy, or gosh, what's the one that they're doing a Netflix documentary on, that Evan Peters is playing? I forgot what the guy's name is.
Bill or John Wayne Gacy?
No, his last name starts with a Jeffrey Dahmer.
Oh, Dahmer. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Jeffrey Dahmer. You think about those kind of serial killers, like they were actually out here murdering people, and multiple people at that. And so it's kind of like, it's this weird fascination of like, hey, even though we're watching this on film, some of this stuff is kind of derived from real life events and can actually happen. So it's kind of like watching something and realizing, hey, this could be kind of true. So
Sure.
that's what kind of draws me to it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, yeah, and I like what you said about horror films that provide us that sense of we can be terrified, but we know we're safe. And that we can face those fears. And ultimately, all horror films are about confronting our own death, our own mortality in a number of grisly ways,
Right.
and just so that we can kind of live through that and come through it feeling okay. Well, at least, yeah, there are things that are bad in my life, but I'm not like that poor sucker who was getting chopped up, Right.
Well,
Right.
I was going to agree with you, Monte. It's like it's a release for the audience, the participant, in the horror,
Mhm.
the event and stuff, because it helps us confront, our own mortality. And then by that, we actually get that, we purge that out through the viewing of the film or whatever. So yeah, I think I was going to agree with you on that. You're dead on with that. Helps us cope with our own fears of
Oh,
mortality.
yeah, certainly. And some of our best horror films have come, like what you had said, Isaiah. Like, these are things like real serial killers, like you'd mentioned Jeffrey Dahmer. But I think like Ed Gein, from out in Wisconsin, who I mean, the character of Leatherface from Texas Chainsaw Massacre is based on Ed Gein, and same thing with Norman Bates in Psycho is based on Ed Gein. So we have these horrific real life people turn into these kind of seminal and archetypal horror characters, again with the mask, and I think that's what the horror is, realizing that these people, the mask is that they're putting on the sense of normalcy. Like, Ed Gein just walked around. He was a farmer in Wisconsin, just walked around town. You would never know that he was dealing with a mother fetish, and kept his mother's corpse, and then was kidnapping and killing women and taking their skins off to make a suit. Just
Dancing
like,
around with them. Yeah.
right. And so I think that's maybe that mask personified, Jason or Michael Myers, or in your killer, that burlap sack, which is really creepy, by the way. Because
trailers look great.
Yeah,
by the way,
trailers are so good. Just the simplicity of it, because it dehumanizes to a way, and I think it's why they also wear like Michael Myers and Jason both kind of wear these outfits, like whether it's coveralls or something like that. They kind of, it's a vague figure. There's it's just like a shape, that kind of belies their size. It adds to that horror.
on that point, my favorite Jason. It's gonna be probably controversial, but I liked him with the potato sack burlap bag in part 2.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
thought that was terrifying.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, the hockey mask thing just became so. It's like, okay, sitting there, seen it, done it, seen it.
Yeah.
But that was the film that sticks out in the franchise. It was just like it was truly terrifying, and it was
Yeah.
such a cool look for him. So I really liked that. Sorry to interrupt, but I
No,
just say
no.
that.
Hey,
Yeah,
that's
I
good.
agree with that. Part 1, part 2, yeah, and then everything that I think after that felt very like kind of what you said. It's kind of like, okay, expected, mundane, but something about those first 2 was just, it felt different, with the mom being the killer, then the different type of mask. I mean, going back to Scream, right?
Right.
Yeah, Drew Barrymore thought she was going to survive when the killer asked, "Hey, who's the killer?" And Friday the 13th, she said, "Jason, Jason, like it's Jason. I watched that movie 100 fucking times. It's Jason." He was like, "No, actually, it's his mother." And so, like, yeah, I feel like
Yeah.
those first 2 definitely.
And then that whole like Carrie ending where Jason comes out of the water. That just scared the
Yeah.
shit out of me when I
Yeah.
saw it in the theater. You know, I just like, oh fuck. No, I
Is
get it.
Jason, would you say, like after kind of understanding Jason a little bit, I'm kind of like, Jason was just a victim of his environment. Like I don't think he wasn't born trying to kill people. Like, his environment and being at the cabin of the counselors and being made fun of. It was kind of like revenge in a way.
Yeah, it's reminds me a little bit of something that would be a good J horror. He's like a ghost, a tormented spirit, who's trapped in this place. Like if you see Juon or the Ring, Ringu,
Yeah.
those kind of spirits are connected to a place, and because he died and was terrified and all those horrible things, his spirit's not at rest. And so he's just coming back for revenge. On a side note, I don't know if you ever watch American Horror Story, but if you get a chance to see American Horror Story 1984, you are going to love it.
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
wow.
That is okay. Yes. So American Horror Story 1984. Well, the American Horror Story franchise anyway. But my favorite are Coven in 1984. But I love 1984 because it was just such, I think, a thank you to just the 1980s, that decade of horror films. And I feel like it really attracted people, millennials in my generation. Because, I mean, we know about those films, right?
Mhm.
But a lot of us are more so focused on the 1990s horror films.
Yeah.
So to kind of see them kind of give ode to those films and those franchises, but still make it theirs. It really, that 1984, it also kind of attracted me to do what I'm doing right now with He's Watching You. Just that whole kind of Phil in the Woods and 1980s aesthetic. So yeah, 1984 was definitely my favorite.
Yeah, that's a great series. I love that one. And it's a nod to us oldsters who lived through the 80s. But that's a great segue, because I wanted to start asking you questions about He's Watching You. Now, what from the trailers that I've seen, and they're fantastic. It definitely has the hallmarks of an 80s slasher film. I mean, the setting, you got a cabin in the woods. I mean, you can't get any more 80s slasher than a cabin in the woods. And then the music is so spot on that to make it feel like, okay, we've stepped back in a time machine. We've gone back, 35, 40 years, and we are back at Camp Crystal Lake in a whole new way. So what is it about that 80s era of slasher films that you really wanted to try to emulate? Like, why? Because I know you love the 90s, but what was it about the 80s that you said, I want to make an 80s slasher film?
Yeah, 100%. I feel like the 80s just had, I mean, that whole decade was just such I think when I look back on it, at least from things I've seen, it felt like it was such a vibrant, fun, creative, free, like, time period. And with the horror movies that came out at that time, I mean, they were just so gory and raw, but I felt like they were gory and raw on a low budget. And so, like, understanding that, and just the 80s in general, those films just have a very artistic, creative aesthetic to them that, now in 2022 we look at, and it's very vintage, it's cool, it's hipster, or whatever the case may be. I think about the most recent horror film that I saw that was kind of giving ode to a little bit of the late 1970s horror films, more so Texas Chainsaw Massacre, was X. I don't know if you guys saw that or heard of it, but it was kind of giving ode to Texas Chainsaw Massacre to a degree in regards to how it was filmed, and it had that very 70s grainy feel.
Yeah.
But I think just that time period with horror films, they were just so, it was a grindhouse feel to them. It was just a very just raw, fun, gory feel that just kind of really attracted me, that I think it's hard to do. I feel like it's a little hard to do with the 90s, because the 90s still feel not too long ago. So it's kind of like if someone was trying to recreate a 90s horror film and let you know that it's 90s, it still may feel current. Whereas with, I think, 80s horror films, from the grindhouse to the grainy film aesthetic, to what the characters are wearing, to the music, to the gore, to the the extremely cheesy acting, like I feel like it just 80s horror movies are really just a brand of their own.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you
Well
think of
said.
some of the stars that get started in those films.
Mhm.
Kevin Bacon, who was in the first Friday the 13th.
Yeah.
Other
Corey
stars,
Feldman.
right? Who came out of that, and yeah, they had to be inventive because there wasn't a big budget, and that
Right.
makes sense now. Why is this in a cabin? Because it's not too expensive to build a cabin set, and when a lot of your budget goes to like pumping out gallons of fake blood,
Yeah.
that's not that's not a bad waste of money, because
Yeah.
people are going to come see that,
Mhm.
um
Mhm.
but getting back into He's Watching You, your
Yeah.
movie's main characters are Black and queer, and
Yeah.
I want to talk about how important it was for you to have this
Yeah.
representation
Yeah.
in your movie, particularly in a horror film.
Yeah, yeah, no, that was so key for me, right? Because as kind of mentioning in the conversation earlier, I am this, Black gay man who grew up watching horror movies that his parents let him watch at 3 years old, so like it was something that I think you know isn't really kind of spoken about in regards to Black people who love horror, and love horror in regards to the films that are very classic and that are stereotyped to have more of a wider audience, right?
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
so like I grew up on these movies. I just always loved them, and I just remember watching them and just getting excited anytime I saw someone who looked like me, not only in the film, but then also survived too, right? So
Sure,
like
because that
I felt
becomes a
like
trope. I mean,
it
the
becomes
fact
a
that,
show.
right, they even make fun of it, like and I've seen some other movies,
Yeah.
where the Black character will say, I'm not going in there because I know I'll be the first one to die.
I mean,
Right,
100%.
exactly. Yeah.
100%. It becomes this trope. So it's like anytime I did see someone who looked like me in a horror film that was not that was just a little bit more kind of mainstream. I just felt related to it. As I mentioned, like one of the
Sure.
first Black characters I saw in a horror film was Brandy, and I still know what you did last summer. She survived. So
Hmm.
for me, it was about really showcasing people who look like me and identify like me in these films that we're used to seeing, but doing it in a way that's kind of like, oh, we've always kind of seen the same type of characters, blonde hair, blue eyes, Susie and David. We kind of know what these things are, but what does it look like when we put these same aesthetics, the same storyline, just on in this case, a couple who happened to be Black and queer,
Hmm.
two Black men in love, which is something you already don't see in general, I
Right.
think, on television, regardless whether it's horror, comedy, action, drama. the image of two Black men being in love with one another or being in a relationship with one another is still a very kind of foreign concept. So I
Sure.
feel like with this film, it's kind of really tackling a lot of different things, but it's doing it in a way to where it's not saying, hey, the focus of this film is going to be on the fact that they are queer. The focus of this film is going to be on the fact that they are, you know, two Black men. Like, the storyline has nothing to do with their identities. They just
Right.
happen to be this identity
Right.
in this really fucked up situation.
Sure. Rather than, because, you know, sexuality was always part of the Friday the 13th franchise, and there was always
Yeah.
this assumption, this a given
Mhm.
for
Yeah.
for heteronormalcy. I mean, that's what they
Right.
were really kind to do. So,
Mhm.
and, you know, that's what was made me so very excited to have you on the show, because I know you're really kind of breaking fresh ground here, which is,
Yeah.
I mean, it's great, but it's also very kind of sad to say that it's 2022 and you're breaking
Right.
ground with this. But
Right.
do you think that, you know, in the scheme of things in our lifetimes, that a character's race or sexual orientation will ever become non-issues? Do you think that will just come to the point where it's just normed enough that it doesn't matter? Because, like you said, the storyline doesn't change. And
Yeah.
I've interviewed other writers in another podcast, and
Yeah.
some of them are gay writers who write horror stories. The characters
Mhm.
just happen to be queer,
Yeah.
but that's it for them. It's like it's a non-issue. Like, no, they
Yeah.
just because that's where they're coming from. But the
Yeah.
story doesn't change just because this is a gay character in peril.
Yeah.
You know, I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah. I think in that essence, do I think we'll get to a point? I think, yeah, I think my thing is it's about creating room at the table for all of these different kind of voices and experiences to kind of like come together as one. You know, with what I'm doing right now with He's Watching You, a lot of people kind of the idea of it, people kind of compare it to Jordan Peele,
I was going to
which
ask about that. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
to Jordan Peele, and I think and that's I mean that's a compliment for me. Like I love Jordan Peele. Like as an actor, I would love to be in a Jordan Peele project, manifesting that.
You should reach out to
Because-
him. I mean, seriously, with this movie, and just throw him out an invite, send him a trail, or do something. Let him know that you're out here making these movies, because his movies are really good.
They
You know,
are,
and
they are.
unsettling, just unsettling, because he does touch on those things of that issues with race
Yeah,
that most of us in America, people who look like me, are
yeah,
really uncomfortable with dealing with, because we're
yeah.
trying to find our place. We're
Right,
trying to be, you know, a lot of us are trying to be better, but it's
right.
still really uncomfortable because
Yeah.
we have to open this giant can of all kinds of worms,
Mhm.
you know.
Yeah.
Um, but he does it in a way that is just hits that nerve like drilling
Mhm.
into a tooth. But
Yeah.
it's, you know, and that's why I think his movies are so effective,
Yeah, no, I
because of
agree.
that.
And I think in going to what I was going to say in regards to his films, I love his films for that reason. I think Jordan Peele and anything he does, he's found his voice in saying, "Hey, not only am I going to normalize Black bodies and now people of color, because even in Nope, some of the other main characters was a Latino guy, I believe, and an Asian man. So like
Mhm.
you're putting these bodies in these horror films that we really haven't seen before, and so it feels like he's always going to have a social, racial, political understatement behind it, which I think is so dope. I think for me specifically, I feel like what I wanted to do with this in regards to horror, I feel like me not saying, oh, I'm gonna have a serial killer who's killing them because they're queer, or I'm gonna have a serial killer kill them um because they you know they're Black or whatever the case may be. I feel like taking away that focus in my head, in my mind, I feel like it allows you to normalize it, because now you're not, the focus is not about their identity in regards to their race or their sexuality. It's just they're just people. And I think when you start to look at marginalized identities, marginalized bodies as people, that's literally how you normalize things, right? You
Mhm.
start to realize, oh, Okay, they're different. Yeah, they're queer, but you know, they love just like I do, or they go through the same things just like I do. And in with He's Watching You, I think the biggest thing I wanted to do also was kind of show this relationship between these two characters and kind of show what they're going through it in a sense of it doesn't matter how you may identify with gender identity or sexual orientation. If you're in a romantic relationship with somebody, have issues, you're going to have problems. And I hope that when people do watch the film, that they can look at it and be like, I can relate to Sydney's character. I've been that person in a relationship, or I can relate to Ryan's character. I've been that person in a relationship. And now you're just normalizing it. So it's not this whole thing of, oh my God, they're gay, and you know, that's going to be the entire storyline. So that's not something I wanted to do. But I think with how Jordan Peele does it, he does it in a way, he's going to include those things, but he's doing it in a way to make a very powerful statement, which I think is like really dope. So even though we're kind of different in how we're doing our filmmaking, I think in the bigger picture of things, it's still bringing Black bodies into a space of horror in a way that we haven't seen it before.
Right. And I mean, not since the 70s, what, you know, when you had the blaxploitation films, and
Right.
there was a whole subsect of Black horror films, you know, horror films
Mhm.
directed and helmed and written and starred in with Black actors,
Yeah.
Black writers, Black special
Yeah.
effects
Yeah.
people, you know, um, and so it's like a resurgence or a renaissance in a way, but it's
100%.
also, they're not exploitative in that
100%.
regards. It's just we have
100%.
people who are being more represented.
100%.
Yeah, which is fantastic. Like that's you're like on the cutting edge of doing things that are I think are gonna bring a lot of attention to the movie and to you, and I hope in a good way.
Good way,
You know,
right?
you know. But no, it's
Absolutely.
awesome because, you know, our sexuality is such a small part of who we
So
are
small.
as
So
people.
small.
But I think we obsess so much about sexual identity in this country, and maybe it has to do with all the puritanical stuff that came over with, you know, with the early settlers and the church and all those kinds of things. That
You're right on it. You're right on
yeah, and all the whole original sin and the sins of the
Right.
flesh, all
Yes.
that garbage, you know,
Yes. Yes.
you know, and it just becomes just like a bastardization of, you know, this religious horribleness that comes over. But it's just like, you know, it's just a small part of who we are as people.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
like, you know, I- someone liking a sports team and someone not liking sports at all, that's a
Yeah.
slim sliver of who they are.
Yeah.
But, you know, but we tend to focus on this, you know, we hyper
Right.
focus on sexuality
Yeah.
or skin color, you know, all those things like
100%.
that. And yeah, but I'm hopeful that with movie directors like you and Jordan Peele and trying to normalize these in
Yeah.
a way that it maybe not, it's going to take a couple generations, I think,
Yeah.
before
Yeah.
everyone's just like, what the fuck were we so
Right.
concerned about, you know?
Right. Exactly.
But it's
Exactly.
exciting to see these voices, and that, you know, and so it's really cool. Um, let me talk a little bit or ask you about just going to ask you some like other like hypothetical questions and just other
Yeah.
kinds of things like
Yeah. This is
what
fun. I'm having a good time.
oh good, yeah, so are we. Yeah,
Yeah.
this is awesome. um so what's the one movie you wish you had directed or produced?
Oh. Jeepers Creepers.
Oh, okay. Be
Jeepers
eating you.
Creepers.
Yeah.
Yeah. The gosh, you know, gosh, I'm not trying to trilogy slander or anything like that. I love the first two. I would say if I could have written that one, what I probably would have done is I would have, of course, kept the same storyline, but I would have loved to see that be in the first one, the brother and sister. If it was, you know, kind of my brand. Oh, let's switch it up. What if it was a black brother and sister. And when I say that, I don't mean in the sense of, oh, since now the main characters are going to be a black brother and sister, we have to make it stereotypical. You know, we
Sure.
have to kind of, tie some things back from like we were talking about that whole exploitive 1970s with black horror films, or even I remember like even in the early 2000s, late 90s, there was like Leprechaun in the Hood, or, it
Yeah,
was just these
right.
very,
Yeah.
yeah, it was
Yeah,
just these very
which we've
like,
seen. We've seen.
Yeah. One.
Was it
One.
who was it? Because he pulls a knife out of his afro. Was it Snoop Dogg or who was it playing him? I forget who it
Are you
was.
talking,
it
are you
might
talking
have
about,
been.
Was it
there was
Leprechaun in
Tales
the
from
Hood
the
too?
Hood too.
Or was it Tales in the
Detective.
Hood? There was someone
Yeah.
who pulls out this huge machete. I'm
Yeah,
like, oh man,
That's
come on,
yeah,
come on, man.
yeah, it just feels,
I
yeah,
know it was a
so
parody. It was almost became parody.
Yeah.
It's like okay, we're doing this for comic effect.
right, right.
Right, right.
Yeah, but I
Yeah.
would say I feel like that would be kind of cool to see that be a focus on just, a regular black brother and sister, and like maybe
Yeah,
how they navigated that horror of this like creature just like
sure.
trying to attack them. Because I feel like I said, for me, I'll literally, and it's so simple, but I'll literally just look at these horror films that I love, and I'm just like, what would this look like if it were, a black lead or a black couple, or people of color, and just keep the same aesthetic, keep the same story, keep the same cinematography, keep all of that. Just they just happen to be this identity. And I think that just would have been, I don't know, I feel like that would have been so fun to see, just a dynamic between a black brother and sister, and kind of like this horror film like Jeepers Creepers. I think that would
Sure.
be fun.
Oh yeah, nice. What A-list actor would you really love to score for your next movie?
Hmm. So this is the actor part coming out of me right now, just because I think he's done such a good job in Jordan Peele's movies and the other movies he's played in. He's such a dope actor. Daniel Kaluuya. I feel like he has such a presence, especially in Jordan Peele's films, that are just very, 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 very strong. I mean, I think about his character in Get Out is totally different from his character in Nope. And he just is so like, he really knows his characters, and he's so in tune with um who they are as people, and just how, not only how it develops to the story, but also kind of representing a certain type of black man, right? Like I feel like some black men can watch him in these movies and feel like, I feel connected to that character. I feel like if I was in his shoes, I would say something like that. Like I remember one of his lines in Get Out was, if I'm around white people too long, I get uncomfortable. I feel like
Yeah,
that's something that I think it just felt very relatable, which I think any type of black guy would, or black person might say, just in a funny way.
sure.
But I
Well,
would
we
say,
won't
yeah.
overstay our welcome when we come down to Atlanta for the rave. So just letting you know.
For sure, for sure. No, but I would say, yeah, Daniel Kaluuya.
Okay, cool. Um, what do you like most about being an indie movie maker?
Um, I think putting my voice out there. I think putting my voice out there in a way that hasn't been seen before. I feel like, and hopefully this doesn't sound too too arrogant, but I do really feel like what I'm trying to create, what I'm trying to be a part of, the things I would love to act in, they're very simple, but it's like we've been so normalized to see one type of vision. It's kind of like those little simple things of just switching something around just make a complete big difference. And so I think what I really enjoy about it is just like putting my voice out there, knowing my voice, and it being different from other people, because I feel like that's kind of what attracts people to kind of be like, hey, who is this new kid who's out here kind of doing these different things? I kind of want to see what this is about, and I kind of want to work with him. And I feel like you kind of become like that new kind of popular kid in school that people just kind of want to get to know and be friends. So I think really just kind of learning to hone my voice and identify what my voice is, and just being unapologetic about it.
Nice. Have you met any of your movie heroes or people you admire in the business? And if so, who did you meet and what was that like?
Yeah, no, not yet. But we are manifesting that I am. We are manifesting that it's going to happen. That I'm going to be that I'm going to be on set and everything like that. I think, like I said originally, I do enjoy the filmmaking aspect, but I think what really got me into filmmaking was being like, I'm not seeing people who look like me or identify like me, and rather than wait for somebody to do it, why don't I just do it? Because if I wait, who knows how long or if even when it could happen. So I'm definitely manifesting. Like I said, I would love to be to act in the Jordan Peele project, to be around people who are similar to that. Even I think of I don't know if you guys saw the re-edition of Candyman.
No, I've not seen the original. I've not seen it.
I really
I love
like
the
it.
original, but I've not seen the remake. You've seen it, Chop?
Oh, yeah, remake's fantastic. I really like
And
it.
it's pretty scary too. It's
It
pretty
is.
scary, and it still kind of has this, of course, with Jordan Peele, right? And side note, this was also the first mainstream horror film that was directed by a Black woman. So that even that was breaking ground. But like, just to be in a team of people who are really kind of breaking that ground in regards to Blackness and horror and telling these different stories, like I really, 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 really hope I can work and be on set with them one day.
Mhm.
Yeah, that was a refreshing surprise. The reimagining remake of that. I really enjoyed that. I was going in not getting my hopes up because a lot of times those are really bad,
Yeah.
regardless. And I was really freshly surprised. And yeah, you're right. There were some very scary sequences in that remake.
Mhm.
So
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah, because the first one is so creepy, and it builds
Yeah.
on itself. And um, it's a kind of a slower moving film, but that doesn't bother me. I'm okay with
Yeah.
taking the journey, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
And but it's just so visceral, and the story, it's just so horrifying, in a
Yeah.
lot of ways. And just the image, the with the bees coming out of his mouth, and just
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
is just a terrifying nightmare.
100%.
So yeah.
yeah,
So
especially if you're allergic to them like me, that is very
yeah.
Oh yeah.
but Montag, that's available on I believe Prime. You can
Oh,
watch
okay.
it.
Well, we have
Part
Prime,
of this,
so
yep.
I'll check it out for sure.
Excellent.
So, I know when I was shooting my movies, I mean, my movies are comedies, so we're always laughing and goofing around.
Yeah.
And you're
Yeah.
doing a straight horror film,
Yeah. Yeah.
but still, kind of fun things happen, unexpected things happen, crazy things happen on a set.
Mhm.
So, do you have any like stories that you can share about like something that happened unexpectedly, or things that happen in the moment of tension where people just start laughing? Anything that kind of like, those are the things that make in the blooper reel. As
Yeah.
as you
Yeah.
know so can you tell about any kind of fun stories that were happening while you were shooting?
Yeah, yeah. So I would say, so when we shot the trailer and the teaser, it was just such a weird contrast, because it was like everyone was just so fun and bright and happy, and we all had such a good time, which I mean, the team that helped me with this, I'm so grateful for them, because I mean, I'm sure as you guys know, like sometimes when you're on set and you're filming long days, the worst thing you want to deal with is a team crew who has bad attitudes and bad energy. Like it can ruin the whole thing. But luckily everybody was really cool and compatible. So like it was just crazy, because like, everyone was really friendly and fun, and we were getting the work done, but we were shooting this kind of very dark, intense type of project. So I would say like some of the bloopers, right, that would happen would be like if I was running and I was trying to like, open the door, and the door was open when it was supposed to be locked, and I like fall through and fall on my face, or like, trying to open the window and it's not, I'm struggling and we're still rolling. I'm like, all right, like, can we do it? Or like there was a moment when I was tied up to the chair, because the killer was recording me. And before we started, well, actually while we started filming, the guy that plays the killer, his name is Jay. He's like 6'7". He had the mask on and everything, and I'm like tied up in the chair. And like while we're filming, he just walks up slowly on me while the camera is rolling, and he just starts to give me a lap dance. Like while the camera is rolling, it's just like, what?
Nice.
I'm like 5'7". He's like 6'6'7", and like this tall guy that has the mask on and just
That's
no
great.
facial expression, just starts to give me a lap dance and starts dancing while we're rolling.
Wow,
So
that's I
those
hope
little
that makes the
things.
blooper reel at the end of the movie. That's
Oh.
fantastic, or at least the director's cut. So
Right,
yeah,
exactly.
no, I love those scenes, those things that happen where everyone just starts laughing, and that's I think the joy of making a film, indie film, is like no one's getting paid. We're all here because we want to have a
Right.
good time,
Yeah.
and that adds to the the fun process of shooting.
Yeah.
And so I love putting the blooper reels on at the end, because that's just
Yeah.
you break the wall. Everyone's just that just kind of shows how much fun it is to kind of do what we do.
Yeah.
And no, I get that. um I'd like to talk a little bit about your creative process. So
Yeah.
how maybe if you could explain it from beginning idea to finished project. How do you go about creating your movie?
Yeah. So I think I definitely first start off with inspiration. And specifically for He's Watching You, of course, it was inspiration from like the 1980s slasher films. But actually, I remember I was watching The Strangers, the sequel, Pray at Night. And I was watching it and I was like, I really liked how it was set in current day, but it kind of had a bit of an 80s aesthetic to it. I don't know if you guys seen The Strangers Pray at Night. But it had a bit of an 80s aesthetic to it, in the sense of, one of the main characters was wearing like a Ramones t-shirt, and then the music that would be played anytime the killer was close, it would be like a rock song from the 80s. So it was like these very kind of slight nod to the 80s. And so I say all that to say it really comes from me kind of watching the film and me thinking, oh, like what would it look like if it was this or this type of storyline, or maybe making it different. So it definitely comes from thinking what I've already seen before, since I love horror. And then from there, kind of thinking about, okay, what's the storyline? What would this center on? And then really kind of creating the writing out the log line. And once I write that out, just really kind of everything I write from there in the script, just making sure it's connecting to whatever that log line is or whatever the engine is of the project. And I think about the characters in it, right? I think about who these characters are, what their background is, what the story is outside of this just being a horror project. Because I think, of course, we love the screaming and the running and the stabbing and the gore, but I feel like a lot of really good movies, especially horror movies, they have that. But then they have like story B, which is kind of like the real kind of situation, right? If we think about Scream, of course, the real human situation in that film was we have a 17-year-old who's dealing with the fact that her mom is dead and was murdered, and just the gossip that came around that and things like that. So just kind of dealing with that on a human basis of I'm a teenager, I just lost my mom, and there's a lot of gossip around that, and I don't know how to deal with that. On top of now you're dealing with this mass killer that's trying to kill you and your friends.
Yeah, and then trying to
So
navigate the complexities of high school, when you feel like
exactly.
you're the only one who doesn't have their shit together.
Exactly.
Right,
Exactly.
exactly.
So basically
Yeah.
having a subplot, you got plot A, you got plot B
Yeah.
underlying as well.
So yeah, so really kind of putting that in there. And so once I know the who the characters are, their backstory, I kind of just do a quick little outline of how I want it to go. Just like bullet point by bullet point. And then once I kind of have this completed outline bullet point, I just start typing, just start writing.
Nice. Excellent. Are there any other genres of movies that you would like to make after this is finished?
I feel like, so I really like A24. And I really like what they do in regards to like drama. So I feel like it would be fun to maybe explore maybe like a drama, thriller, maybe suspense type of film, maybe not straight horror, but one of the short films that I produced and starred in before I did He's Watching You, it's called Vengeance. It's a black and white type of noir film, but basically it's about a ex-Marine that seeks revenge on the man that killed his fiance in a hate crime. So I really wanted it to kind of have that Kill Bill, Quentin Tarantino type feel, but kind of put power in the hands of someone who is stereotyped to always be the oppressed. I felt like you always hear about, hate crimes against, the queer community, but you never hear anything spoken about in regards to someone from that community actually getting revenge, or the oppressor now being the oppressed and the victim and stuff like that. So I feel like, I would definitely love to kind of explore also that kind of drama thriller type of genre as well.
Nice. All right. It's going to seem like an odd question, but the handful of questions I have left are just kind of all over the place.
Yeah,
So,
you're fine.
so here we go. Who's your favorite cartoon character?
My favorite cartoon character. My favorite cartoon character. I'm gonna go with Winnie the Pooh. I'm gonna go with Winnie the Pooh. He just seemed to have such a very chill, free-form life. Just ate honey all the time. Was out in the woods. I mean,
Yeah.
what it was just easy. He was with his friends. He had his crew. Like it just happy. Like who wouldn't want that? So I'm gonna go with Winnie the Pooh.
Yeah. All he had to sweat was where his next jar of honey was coming from.
Pretty much.
It's like, his shirt didn't go down all the way. It didn't bother
It
him.
did.
It's like, nah, I'm naked from my belly down. Who cares?
Who cares?
Right?
Who cares?
Exactly.
Free one.
There you go. Nice. What is your favorite movie snack?
I'm not gonna say popcorn because I think that's too traditional. I'm going to say Sour Patch Kids.
Oh, nice. All right.
Sour Patch Kids, yeah.
If a biopic is made of your life, who would you want to play you?
Ooh, gosh, I forgot his name. He's in Stranger Things. Gosh, he's the black kid. You guys know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I can't
Gosh,
remember
I forgot his name. But I've seen some of his work in Stranger Things. I think he's a dope actor. And I feel like he would probably be able to, maybe give my life a fun little thrill. So I would go with him. I would go with him.
Nice. All right. I think you probably have already answered this, but I'll ask anyway. Who's your bucket list celebrity to meet?
Outside of Jordan Peele, I'm gonna say Issa Rae. I'm gonna say, and Issa Rae is like not even Issa Rae isn't even horror, right? She's a totally different lane, but I love Issa Rae. I love who she is, and I love her content because very similar to Jordan Peele, she is someone who is just like, hey, I'm going to create this content to represent people who look like me, but who I haven't seen identified before. I'm gonna make it real. I'm gonna make it authentic and hope people relate to it. Hope an audience relates to it. And now she's like this. She had her own hit show on HBO, Insecure, which was awesome. I love Insecure. As an actor, I would love to be in a show like Insecure as well. She's out here producing other content and whatnot. So I would definitely say Issa Rae.
All right. What would you tell your childhood self about being a movie producer?
What would I tell myself? I would say, don't listen to those inner negative thoughts that may be in your head or that may come from outside people, based on, just who you are. And just remember to move through all of these spaces, acting, writing, directing, just all those spaces. Just move through those spaces as a bad bitch. Yeah.
Hey, it's hey, there's a reason why we have two middle fingers, and so we don't wear the one out.
Exactly.
Yeah, there we go. Nice.
Yeah.
We're all fans of something. All of us are movie fans here. Do you have a favorite piece of memorabilia that you bought at a convention, or that someone gave to you, or that you bought somewhere? Do you have something that reminds you of what it is that you like about horror movies?
Oh, I don't think so. I don't think I have anything recent. I think I more so got into it when I started getting into He's Watching You. I was looking at different masks to get. And fun fact, the knife that is used in the trailer, in the film, is actually a replica of the same knife that was used in Halloween 2, the sequel.
Oh, okay, cool.
Awesome.
Yeah, so
Someone's gonna spot that, someone's gonna say,
Yeah.
hey, that knife looks familiar.
Yeah. So I would say, I think doing this film and try to find just those different things, like the knife and the mask, and seeing how these things kind of correlated to some of my favorite horror films. It felt kind of cool. It made me feel like, hey, I'm really taking aspects of these movies that I love and that I enjoy and that are inspiring me to do this project, and I'm taking a little piece from them. Even one of the main characters in He's Watching You, the couple, my character, his name is Sydney. That's the ode to Scream.
Yeah, there you go.
Because that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so the first kind of horror film that I watched, it being Scream, and me thinking, hey, what if Sydney can be a male's name, taking that type of little ode. So yeah.
Nice. All right. We're down to just a few questions left, Isaiah. So when you're not making movies, what kinds of things do you do for fun?
So if I'm not doing that, if I'm not, acting and, making films, I do enjoy going to the gym. I do like to work out, but that's because in my head, I feel like one day I'm a book a role, and I'm gonna be like a Black queer version of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. So I just feel like I'm mentally preparing my body for that role.
Yeah, there you go.
But outside of that, I actually also enjoy dancing. Fun fact, before I even got into acting and filmmaking, I was a dancer. I was a dance major in college, grew up dancing, did things around, W. Allen Dance Academy and stuff like that. So I transitioned into film because I felt like I could say more and do more. But I still enjoy dancing, having a good time. I mean, I'm throwing a rave tonight. Why would I not enjoy dancing?
Yeah. I just had an idea. If you ever do a parody film or a comedy horror,
Yeah.
the main character has to be able to use dance moves to beat the bad guy.
Oh, that would be
murderer.
awesome.
Or there is a dance off, there has to be a dance off, something like that.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Can you imagine that? A dance off between me and Freddy Krueger or something
Right.
like that.
We're gonna rave to the grave,
Right.
River dancing in it and everything. Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
that would be great. I would totally want to see that movie. Um, are you watching anything good on streaming services on Netflix, Prime, Hulu? What are you watching?
What am I watching? What am I watching? So it's not horror related, but it's Issa Rae. She has a new show called out. She has a new show out. It's called it's called Rap Shit. And basically it's just about these two girls who are in a rap duo and they're just trying to make it in Miami, in the hip hop culture of Miami. But the reason I love it so much because it just feels so authentic and real and speaking to a certain demographic. It's kind of like, once again, wow, like this feels like me and my friends, or I've seen this scenario before. So it really ties back to what I was saying earlier, just in regards to filmmaking and acting and representation. I think when you're able to see things that feel very authentic to you, as an audience member, as a group, it just hits really heavy because it's like representation. So really like Rap Shit. It's a really fun, relatable show. Far from horror, the furthest thing from horror, but it's definitely a fun, relatable show for sure.
Okay. What's the one thing almost no one knows about you?
Oh gosh, revealing secrets on the air. Oh my. Well, I hope my parents don't listen to this. I would say one thing listeners know about me. Mm.
I mean, if you're all out there, that's fine too. I mean, maybe you don't have any
Right.
secrets.
I would say, I would say that when I am home alone, I put on, if I just need a pick me up, I'll just like put on a private concert by myself. I'll put on like a Prince song, and in my head, I'm Prince, and I'm just dancing and performing. Like it's just, I feel like it's like a creative outlet. Like I
Sure.
find freedom and like being creative, and I find freedom in fantasy and in creativity, which is why I think I enjoy acting and filmmaking so much. So sometimes I'll just, to pick myself up, I'll just, put on a song, and in my head, I am that person. I'm putting on a concert.
I like
Yeah,
that. That's awesome.
you can Vogue, Isaiah. Let's go.
Yeah, that's right.
Right, exactly.
Exactly.
I can't myself,
Exactly.
I mean, Chop Top can't wear that lacy stuff like he used to, like Madonna does, but yeah,
I'm too
we'll
sexy
try.
for
Yeah,
that.
maybe back in the day. All right, the last couple questions, Isaiah. When is He's Watching You coming out?
Yeah. So with this project, I'm going to be doing this the crowdfunding route. If people don't know what crowdfunding is, like your listeners, crowdfunding is basically literally what it sounds like: getting funding from a community, getting funding from a crowd to help produce a project. It's really important for me to get crowdfunding for this project because, as you guys saw, like with the trailer, my biggest thing for this is I want it to be of quality, because I feel like if a story like this is done right, people will really be like, oh wow, like this is different. Like I want to invest in this, or this is something we haven't seen before. So and just the crew that's involved with it. Of course, their rate as well. So it's really important for me to do crowdfunding for this. So I say that to say, I'm working on the campaign right now, finalizing it, and planning to have it be released and live late September, early October. So pretty much the fall Halloween time frame is when the campaign is going to be live, and being able to receive donations and things along those lines. So say that to say, have the campaign be live for about a month and a half, 2 months, October, November, manifesting that I will get, the funds needed to really kind of create this into a full short film. I would see us filming in the spring and planning to, have a release in September, and, putting her out to film festivals around the Halloween timeframe next year.
That's excellent. So I'm gonna what crowdfunding platform will you be using? Will you be using which one are you going to be using?
Yeah.
So like if
So
people
I'm
want to
yeah.
contribute, that's why I
Yeah.
want to say, how can they help you get this movie going? Where
Totally.
can they go to throw their
Totally.
money at you and say, take my money, I want my movie?
Yes, no. So Seed and Spark is the platform I'm going to be using for He's Watching You. Once again, listeners, Seed and Spark, He's Watching You. And what I really like about Seed and Spark is their whole goal really is to help filmmakers really gain donations to produce their film. So what it is, you create the campaign, you send it to them, they then review it, and then based on what what the budget is and what you need, they then send you back some comments and critique and say, hey, we suggest that you do it this way, or maybe add this, or maybe make this more clear. And research shows that people who follow our comments and critique usually get the funding that they need. So Seed and Spark is what I'm going to be using. And once they kind of give me the feedback on the campaign, of course, make it live. If anyone does want to just kind of stay up to date with just kind of what's going on currently before the campaign becomes live, we do have the Instagram page as well. He's Watching You Film. Of course, you guys follow it, so I'm sure you can include that.
Sure.
They probably can text and whatnot, but if you want to follow that Instagram page, you definitely can. But yeah, definitely in the fall, it's going to be Halloween time. It's going to be live on Seed and Spark.
Nice. And then eventually it'll come out like on a straight to video release or like a DVD, or will it
Yeah.
be other
So
formats? Streaming?
my goal for this is actually, I really want to push this in on the short film festival route. I really want to push this to a lot of film festivals, major film festivals at that, like Tribeca and Sundance, because I do feel that with the subject matter of it, if it's done in a very professional way, I truly feel like it's going to gain a lot of attention. Like that's just kind of how I feel.
I think so.
And just in my head, like I feel like somebody like a Jordan Peele or an A24 would look at this and be like, this idea was dope as a short film. Now let's see what this is like as a full film.
Yeah.
And so my goal, definitely nothing against, putting it out on streaming services, but the goal for this is to get it to have more publicity and more notoriety, and really pushing out to some of these major film festivals.
Well, that's awesome. No, I love that. So if you ever do run into Jordan Peele, just put a good word in for us. Just say, hey, I know these guys. Yeah, you might want to. That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
No, that's good. So the last thing I would like to ask you is if you wouldn't mind doing a bumper for us for the show. Like, this is Isaiah Rice of He's Watching You, and you are watching and listening to Heavy Metal Horror. Would you mind doing that? Something like that for us?
Of course. Yes.
Excellent. All right. I'll let you have at it.
All right. So what's up, everybody? My name is Isaiah Rice. I'm an actor, writer, producer. I love horror. I fucking love it. And I mean, you're listening to what, like one of the best horror podcasts out there right now? I mean, tell your friends, tell your family. Like, it's amazing. If you don't know about it, get into it. It's the Heavy Metal Horror Podcast, y'all.
Excellent. Thank you. That's like one of the best bumpers we've ever had. Yeah. So that's great. Thank you.
So kind.
Isaiah, thank you so much for spending an hour with us, hour and 15 minutes, and just having such a wonderful conversation and telling us all about yourself and your movie. This has been a really wonderful time. We've really enjoyed getting to know you. Yes.
Thank you guys so much. I had such a good time. It was great to talk about the film, to talk about the project, to talk about my love for horror. I'll definitely keep you guys posted offline as well in regards to the campaign and things along those lines. And yeah, this was fun. I enjoyed it. I feel like I'm like really pepped up now for the rave later. So it's just today's gonna be a good day.
You need that energy. That's great. Yeah, we've been doing a lot more music shows lately, a lot of
Yeah.
interviews, but we're, now we're entering into the fall. We'll be doing more horror stuff, but we try to do a balance, music, horror, so, you're welcome back anytime. If you just want to
Mhm.
sit in and talk about horror films,
Yeah,
so
subject, join us in
yeah,
discussion.
you're more than welcome to join us anytime.
Awesome.
So
Thank
you are a true horror fan, your stuff, and which is great because you're one of us, like
Yes.
you fit in so well, so that's great. So, well, we're going to do our commercial and we're going to get out of here.
Awesome. Sounds good.
You can find Heavy Metal Horror on unsaneradio.com, listen to full episodes, or download to your device. You can find us on Facebook, Heavy Metal Horror Podcast. On Instagram, look for Montag Lewis, one word. Our YouTube page, Heavy Metal Horror Podcast. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button. And we're now on Roku, Hotel Metal Jam. And if you know someone who would like us, tell them about us. This has been Montag, Master of Illusion.
Chop top.
And you've been watching and listening to, all right, Isaiah, bring up the horns.
All right.
Heavy metal horror.
Yeah.
All right.
This is Doug Helvering, and you have been listening to Heavy Metal Horror, the best podcast that you've never heard before.